Hi, this is Kevin Lee with the eMarketing Association. My day job's running Did It, and my passion venture is Giving Forward, a nonprofit. I'm here with Ujjwal Dhoot, who runs digital marketing at DXL. We're going to have a conversation about a bunch of topics. Thanks so much for joining me, Ujjwal.
Thanks, Kevin. Nice being here.
So one of the things that perplexes a lot of marketing teams on the digital side is how much to invest in SEO. SEO obviously is more like PR in that it's earned media, but it often gets underinvested because it's harder to calculate ahead of time what the ROI might be. So what advice would you have as someone who's been in a bunch of online retailers and a bunch of e-commerce and brick and mortar ventures? How should they think that through? How should they think through their SEO investment?
Kevin, I remember back in the day, we used to have agencies all the time pitch to us saying we can get you a guaranteed first page and we can get you. It's taking me back to the old days of SEO
Right.
and the guaranteed rankings to how it's evolved over the years. And the most pertinent example I have about this is when I was at one of the companies I was at. A healthcare business, and I had to convince the founder. Um, I had to convince the founder when we were only a team of 30 or 40 individuals to get me a full-time resource. And I'm not going to tell you what it's going to do for the business for the next 6 months to a year because I can't show you any impact. So we did hire that content writer. We wrote and wrote and wrote for about 6 to 9 months, I'd say. But it's not like we were trying to do things aimlessly. We had a strategy in mind. We
Right.
already knew where we wanted to go. We already had a roadmap to get there. We hired someone to help us get there to do the writing. And when we published it, 2 months after that, our SEO traffic, which was growing in the 20, 30, 40% year over year range, started growing at 200 to 250% year over year range. So the point I'm trying to make out here is it is about the long-term impact and it is about planning 4 and 3 and 4 quarters out. It is not about trying to make your results this quarter or this month. It's not going to help you get there. It's something you do consistently. And the most important thing is trying to understand your customer, trying to understand the macroeconomic factors that drive whatever vertical of industry you are in, and what makes you different versus how can you position yourself as the thought leader and the advocacy first organization within your space. And we did that. And I can tell you, we acquired many, many, many tens of thousands of customers with the SEO dominance we had.
Right, right. Yeah, that's very cool. Great example of how there's a lag between your investment and when you start to see the returns. And I think that's probably what scares a bunch of CMOs away from it. But if you don't do it, you can't, if you're not in it, you can't win it.
It's kind of it's the other analogy that I like to give about it is you have some projects that are sure wins, or you have some projects or initiatives or investments that are more predictable. And SEO is not predictable short term, but it's pretty predictable long term. And then the third tier of investments you have that are moonshot projects that are not predictable long term and not predictable short term. So you kind of have to build your framework of what's predictable short term, what's predictable short and long term, and also have a couple moonshot projects that are not predictable long or short term, but if you win really big.
Right, right. Yeah, one of the things I've been advising newer companies with regards to SEO is to think about SERP dominance and not just about your own domain, but about all the other positive mention locations. It's more like digital PR, like all the other locations you could have content, syndicated content or digital PR that might allow you to take over the SERP. So it's not as narrowly focused as it used to be because you've got these intersections between social media, content marketing, digital PR, traditional PR, and of course, old school SEO.
Yeah, the best form of flattery any organization can get is when you get chosen to become the featured snippet, the content snippet that Google has that says, here's the best article for this piece of content that you're searching for. And you need to do enough research on who shows up in your vertical in your industry as a content snippet, why those pages show up, and then what can you do better that they're not able to do with their pages, with their links, with their social media strategy, and so on.
Right, right. Now, you've been involved in pure plays like e-commerce pure plays, and you've also been involved more recently, obviously, with hybrid multi-channel merchants where you've got your store footprint, and now you've got the e-commerce side, and of course you've got things like curbside pickup. Has curbside pickup actually improved the visibility of your ability to see when a person orders online and picks up in the store? You might not have seen that 3 years ago, right? Because you might not have had curbside pickup, or the person would have just jumped in their car and headed down to the store. But now you can sort of tie it back in a way you might not have been able to before. Has that actually been a good outcome from a marketing visibility perspective?
I think there's the answer. The short answer is yes, but I'm going to give you the long one. We in retail, we've always had buy online, pick up in store, and that's been in development for the last decade. Buy online, pick up in store has gained a little bit of momentum, but it wasn't until 2020 that we really saw inflection that was material. And when I say we, I mean everyone in retail. We saw material inflection from not just the pickup in store, but curbside. I think that's definitely helped with the visibility. However, I think there's been a movement to connect the web to store. And a lot of the MarTech we use has been helping us do that anyway. If you look at all the Google AdWords or all things Google Ads, they now allow you to check your store traffic based on anything you do from a bidding perspective online. You can stitch identities by using a third-party identity stitching company. There's many of them to help better understand who visits your website before and then goes to store. There has been a lot of research that's been done that say 50, 60, 70%, a big percentage of our interactions with why we want to buy with a brand actually start online. So I think there's a few different things that play out here, and all of them are contributing to better visibility for what you spend online and what actually happened in store. But I think we have to recognize that the consumer is looking for things online now. Some people, I don't know, if I have a small health condition, the first thing I go is Google something and I see a WebMD article. I shouldn't be doing that, but that's the typical user experience. So we are leaning on our search engines for information, and we are leaning on our product engines, which is Amazon and Google for the most part, for advice on products. And by doing that, inherently, we are being influenced by not many. It's a handful of properties on the web to be able to make our decision in what we want to do next.
Right, right.
But sorry, the only last thing I'd add is I think COVID also forced the entire retail industry, and at least we're not looking at things as channels anymore. We don't look at the web versus store anymore. In some places in retail, from what I have heard, they're still viewed as channels, but you need to think about the customer first and the channel second. The channel is only a mechanism they choose to engage with you in. That's all it is. And it just happens to be that a customer that engages with you on the app and on your web and in the store is a better customer because they have opted in to engage with you in 3 different mediums. That does not necessarily mean that you can get all your customers to engage across all your devices or platforms and convert all of them into the most loyal group or cohort that you have.
Right, right. Yeah, that leads perfectly into my next question, which is obviously as retailers start to unify their web and their store data, right? You're going to have business intelligence platforms that hypothetically would allow you to get a really good idea of what your most profitable cohorts look like, what the LTVs are. But a lot of marketers, they don't, either because they're new or because their systems are antiquated, have very little visibility into LTV, and therefore have to sort of make decisions based on short-term data, so like ROAS or whatever. So given that, what recommendations would you have for a CMO or a VP of digital that's sort of moving towards having a deeper view of the data, but is not there yet?
I think the biggest thing, I'm going to give an example of yesterday. The Super Bowl was yesterday. Tom Brady and team won. There's a lot of analysis that's done, and I've been reading some articles that say we're happy Tom Brady won because it's great for the equity markets. Tom Brady winning and making a correlation to equity markets is correlation. It's not causation. I think as a marketer, and not just digital marketing, but as a marketer, we need to be able to separate the truth from noise. And Tom Brady winning and the markets going up is more noise than the truth. The truth is that the markets go up because a lot of macro and microeconomic factors, and it's not related to who wins the Super Bowl. Similarly, in marketing, we need to try and understand why is it that the customer is spending more money? Is the customer spending more money because we gave them a coupon? Or is it that customers who use coupons actually spend more money? Is the customer coming back and buying with us in a specific buying mechanism because they want to engage with us out there and they are a more valuable customer versus us incentivizing them to go in that channel, and that's the only reason they are there. So lifetime value-based marketing is important, and lifetime value-based marketing is actually not very difficult to get to. There's a lot of businesses. You can lean on third parties, but you can also lean on your internal team. I'm sure as a head of marketing or a VP of digital, you have internal analytics teams that can help you solve for the most basic use cases. You can always get to the very, very advanced LTV, but all you need is 80% of the way there to start to understand how to differentiate your spend. And to get 80% of the way there, the simplest thing I would suggest to someone is look at your campaigns 3 or 4 different ways. You have the shopping campaigns, you have all things non-branded, and you have all things branded. You can also look at campaigns as a private label and branded merchandise. For example, if you're an apparel, you can look at high average order size versus low average order size items. And the point I'm trying to make is these are 3 or 4 different variables. Divide what is important to your customer and divide your customer into cohorts that are separate to try and understand which one of them produces the higher lifetime value. And that way you can even spend more money on that direction. I can assure you it's not very difficult to do with the technology that exists today. It's not very difficult to do with the thought process and the level of segmentation that's available today, even if you do not have a sophisticated segmentation platform.
Right.
I mean, if you have a SQL database, that's pretty much all you need I'm thinking you're a $10 million company or a startup, you have a SQL-based database, and you have someone that's an analyst who can query some data and help you get to the answer.
Yeah, I mean, one of the points I've made to a lot of clients and prospects is that understanding the difference between your best and your average customers really empowers us to be more aggressive in certain channels and within certain segments of those channels. And we're in an auction-based marketplace now. So, you need the leverage. You need the ability to know that certain clicks, certain impressions are far more valuable than others, right? And that's where the power comes from, is that analysis, the LTV analysis.
Yep.
One thing that's changed a lot since probably you and I got started is sort of this agile marketing concept. When I got started, which is probably quite a bit before you, but in the early 90s, media plans basically were locked in by Thanksgiving. It didn't change a whole lot.
Yeah.
Now it's unusual for us to go through an entire week and not make tweaks and sometimes fairly major adjustments to online digital media mix. So, for those folks who are sort of still coming along in that process, how should they decide sort of how nimble or how frequently to reassess the media plan? Obviously, COVID has sort of made older media plans obsolete,
Yep.
pandemics, but then more than ever before. But sort of just from a general process perspective, how should they think about how often to reevaluate marketing mix?
So I think there's a set of negotiables and there's a set of non-negotiables. The set of non-negotiables are things that define success. What are the metrics we're going to use to measure success? How are we going to measure it? And that shouldn't really change for a business where your margins and I'm gonna for the sake of numbers make some numbers up, but if your margin after your shipping and product costs are about 50%, to break even, you spend about 2x ROAS. And that measure of success should not change. But what really should never be static, on the other hand, is how you spend money on a daily and weekly basis. So we really pivot our plans, and I actually recommend to everyone to pivot their plans as real time as possible and on a daily basis. We don't. We do a lot of incrementality testing, and I believe everyone should be doing incrementality testing on here's the outcome that would have happened versus here's the outcome that happened. The best way to understand and learn on how media is working or not is to hold out control groups and then let the other, you hold out a 20% control group, let the 80% experience something that the 20% doesn't and see how they perform to see really what value you added and what value the media added. And if the media adds more value than what it costs, you double down.
Right. Yeah, we find that particularly powerful when it's not a last click attribution media type, right? And then you need to do geographic holdouts,
Yep.
or you can do a longitudinal test, but the geographics are much more powerful.
There's lots of ways to test. I've done tests literally that have lasted no more than one day on a web business where you do $500,000 a day. Any web business, you don't need more than 2 days worth of data to run a test on the website to get powerful results. For something like direct mail or for something like email, you can always test the cadence. And a cadence at one of the companies I was at, we did a cadence test for direct mail where customers received a piece of direct mail every month, every other month, every quarter, or twice a year. And we did a year-long test on what is the right cadence at which to send out direct mail to get the optimal ratio or optimal cost to sales. So there's really different ends of the spectrum on testing, and you have to define what's right for you based on what channel you're talking about and what the cycle for that marketing is and what the ability for that to influence your larger long-term vision and plan is.
Yeah. I mean, one of the reasons we acquired three direct mail companies is, there's a huge interaction effect between direct mail and digital, especially when you can do, hyper specialized promo codes and, customize the recipient's piece, not just based on a promo code, but potentially even swapping out graphics and stuff. It's pretty powerful. And then you can overlay digital IP-based targeting to their household and do banner advertising there. It made sense for us to go into that business.
Yeah, I think 1 + 1 + 1 often adds up to 5, and that's one of the challenges I have as a marketer, and I think about a lot is 1 + 1 + 1 is equal to 5, but if you do 1 + 1 and take away the third element, is that now equal to 4 or 2?
Yeah,
Because
back to incrementality.
exactly, it's the where's the equilibrium between how many things you do, how many times you touch the customer with the optimal point on the revenue curve.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue into my next question, which is really about sort of the shiny objects, right? And there's always something new. Either it's a new ad type or new targeting type with an existing platform that you use, or it's a new platform that's sort of reached critical mass, and now you sort of have to decide, okay, do I slice off a piece of my budget to test this and truly, determine incrementality of it, whether it's TikTok, for example, or something else. So is there a certain percentage of digital spend that you recommend people hold off for the sort of shiny object testing?
I don't have a specific budget in mind. I know in some past lives I've used between 5 and 10%. Conceptually, I think that feels like about in the right place where we are controlling outcomes for 90% of what we spend, or at least we believe we're controlling outcomes for 90% of what we spend. And we have 5 to 10% in the kitty to create completely unpredictable outcomes and account for zero revenue coming from it. But the way I like to think about it is you need to do the things you're doing right first before trying new things. As marketers, we all love shiny objects. I can't deny I love shiny objects, but oftentimes in doing that, we ignore the things that we're not doing right, or the things we're not doing well, or the things we're not doing perfectly first. In the startup ecosystem, we often talk about the minimum viable product. We talk about MVP approach, and the MVP is really what you need for the customer experience to be seamless without the customers noticing what's different. But you, as a business owner or as an employee, obviously know the difference. So I think about it as what are the minimal number of things you need to get the customer experience right to try something versus a completely elegant solution? Because when you start doing that, if you um, it always takes X amount of time to get 90% of the way there, and to get 100% of the way there in terms of getting a project up and running, it takes 2X the time. So the difference between going from 90 to 100 is twice the amount of time. And
Right.
if you just understand that conceptually, you can speed up your iterative testing process and try many more new shiny objects. I don't know if that's a good thing, but you can at least increase the pace of innovation by simply doing that, to try and understand what works better in terms of tactics.
Right, right. So Ujjwal, the one of the challenges that many marketers are facing, depending on the demographics and psychographics of their target audiences, is the rise of the ad blocker. And obviously, particularly display or programmatic video, and other than search, and even search can be sometimes ad blocked. So it becomes particularly challenging to reach certain segments of your audience. Where does influencer marketing fit in? Where do other forms of earned media fit in? But in particular, sort of branded content and influencer marketing. Does that belong in pretty much every media plan if your audience is one of these hard to reach audiences these days?
I think hard to reach or easy to reach. I don't think that matters anymore. I almost take issue with the fact that we think, as marketers, that our ads are as effective as we really think they are. And maybe I'm being self-critical as a marketer, but our ads do not have as much influence or sway over customers as we believe they do. And what I mean by that is, I don't know how many customers care about banner ads anymore. There's obviously richer media, but if you were to compare one of the ads I saw on the web today to an article I read that mentioned a brand and it was authentic, I might remember more authentic connections a lot more than the video reel I saw on that YouTube video I watched today. So the challenge I have with the assumption that ad blockers mean we need to move to richer media types, and what are those richer media types is also the fact that we're assuming that we have more sway over the customer than they actually do, versus the customer actually having an independent voice and an independent opinion about what they prefer to engage and who they prefer to engage with. And that really happens with influencer content and branded content. And when I say influencer content, I don't always talk about Instagram, and that's not what the intent is, not what I mean. When I talk about influencer content, it's about for a B2B software company, it's really, I read recently that HubSpot bought The Hustle. That to me is a big, big foray and a combination of MarTech and media, which we're going to see more and more of, where MarTech are going to be wanting to be seen as thought leaders and advocacy groups in the domain they operate in. So there will be more acquisitions that happen from MarTech over to media, because it's not as easy to influence the customer as we think. And the last thing we want to do is create or try and attempt to create something that's unauthentic. The more authentic we are, the higher the chance that the customer engages with us.
Right, right. Yeah, I just recently did an interview with Gregory Gallant from Muckrack, and we were talking about the fact that the influencers, while they sometimes are looking for payment, they also have to sometimes just create content, and there might be opportunities for earned media, authentic earned media, as a result of those influencers as well. So it's not like they always have their cap out or their handout, and sort of you need to balance those off.
I almost think the influencers, the traditional way influencers are defined, we need to call them something else. They are not influencers. They are not ambassadors. In some cases, they might be brand ambassadors, and that's who they are. But that's a better terminology than influencer. And another better terminology, like I don't know what you would call someone who creates brand awareness. What they do is create brand awareness. Whether they influence or not, we don't know.
Yeah, yeah. We certainly saw with the Super Bowl, which was yesterday, that there was a greater use of celebrities than ever before, right?
Yeah.
And I like to think about it where the brand is essentially borrowing the halo effect that comes with in involving themselves with the celebrity. And obviously, everyone had their own opinions as to which of the Super Bowl ads did the best job of leveraging those celebrities. Some feel that some of the ads were fails, and others thought that the ads were magnificent, that really broke through the clutter. But I guess that's the ultimate form of influencer marketing, right? Is this celebrity being your brand ambassador, being your spokesperson, and essentially starring in an ad. Are there any platforms or channels or marketing types that you're particularly excited about?
I go back to what I said a little bit ago about doing things that you're doing today and do them better versus trying to think about new things. There's obviously it's interesting to see how TikTok's evolving, and it's interesting to see how. Have you seen that? Have you seen that infographic that shows how every social media platform is different from each other? And by that, I mean with sarcasm that they're not different. They're all the same now. It's like a grid with a checkbox of features,
Right.
and you can see one social media platform starts and creates a new feature, and a couple months down the line, every other media platform has it. So
Right.
whether it's Instagram or Snapchat or TikTok and Facebook, they're all a copy of each other at this point. They're not very different than each other in the functionality they offer. But I know that specifically is only social media platforms and not other types of platforms. We run tests all the time with different platforms. I can't publicly speak to a couple of ones that we are working with to do more with, but conceptually, I can say that I am very excited about being able to drive and measure store traffic with the web. So one of the biggest things in retail is, and one of the biggest challenges in retail is to try and understand how you influence that store visitor from all the web marketing that you do. And I think we're getting closer and closer and closer to getting to a true answer. And that answer varies depending on what company you are and what market and vertical you are in. But for us, I think it's a very big priority because that's just the future. The direct part of the business, the .com part of the business continues to grow at a dramatic pace. And as that happens and consumers are coming online more and more, we need to truly understand, are we only building a web business or influencing a greater level of store customer, which we have, which we know that it's a combination of the two, but it's isolating the variables as a marketer that's most exciting.